The narrative begins with a boy standing in the middle of the arcade with a cold look on his face, while several thugs lie defeated around him. He loudly scolds them for bullying weaker people and stealing money from others. As the boy prepares to leave, a girl suddenly calls out to him from behind. She thanks him for saving her. The boy turns around, confused because he does not recognize her at first. The girl calmly explains that he is the one who just saved her from those thugs. Only then does the boy remember the situation properly. He recalls seeing the girl surrounded by the gang and stepping in without thinking it through. Since he only happens to pass by the arcade, he almost forgets about her face. The boy tells the girl that the arcade is full of bad people, so she should avoid it if possible. The girl nods and says she will keep that in mind. The boy's name is Koharu Sanada. Although he has a naturally mean and intimidating face, he is actually just a normal high school student. However, while standing there, Koharu suddenly hears the girl's thoughts clearly inside his head. The girl cannot stop thinking about how cool he looks while protecting her. In her mind, he appears like a hero straight out of a story. She admires the way he fearlessly stands up against the thugs to save someone he does not even know. The girl sincerely thanks Koharu once again with all her heart. In reality, he possesses the ability to read other people's minds. As he stands there listening to her thoughts, he hears her calling him a justice prince and imagining him as the hero who saved her life. She even thinks he looks incredibly cool while fighting. Koharu becomes embarrassed after hearing all of it. To hide his emotions, he keeps the same mean expression on his face and quickly starts leaving the arcade. However, the girl notices something different about him. She wonders if he is actually blushing beneath that scary expression. A second later, she dismisses the idea in her mind and convinces herself that a cool guy like him would never blush over a hopeless girl like her. Koharu becomes slightly annoyed because her thoughts are so loud inside his head. Even so, the girl easily sees through his appearance. To her, Koharu only pretends to act tough when, in reality, he is actually a shy and gentle boy who does not know how to express himself properly. She finds that side of him surprisingly charming. Koharu struggles to handle her thoughts for very long because, deep down, he starts feeling the same way about her. After leaving the arcade, he still cannot stop thinking about her words. He spent his whole life hearing the thoughts of others, and most people usually see him as scary or intimidating because of his face. Nobody ever viewed him differently before. For the first time in his life, someone thought of him as cute. Later that night, Koharu cooks dinner at home. Just like facial features, intelligence, physical ability, and lifespan are decided by genetics at birth, Koharu's telepathy also comes from his bloodline. His father possesses the same ability and can hear the thoughts of other people as well. While looking at the meal, Koharu's mother smiles and says the food smells delicious. At the same time, her thoughts wander between wondering when Koharu's father will return home, how hungry she feels, and how proud she is of how amazing Koharu has grown up to become. Later, the three of them sit together at the dining table and enjoy the meal. His mother happily compliments the food and says she wants Koharu to teach her how to make it next weekend. Koharu simply says that he only followed a recipe online. Meanwhile, Koharu's father quietly sits at the dinner table with a tired expression on his face. Although he calmly eats his meal, his thoughts are completely focused on the 10,000 yen he lost earlier at the gambling machines. He keeps thinking about how close he is to winning before his luck suddenly turns against him again. The moment Koharu hears those thoughts, he immediately tells his father telepathically that the machines are completely hopeless and that he should finally give up wasting money on them. His father stubbornly argues back through, insisting that he can quit anytime he wants and that he simply has a temporary streak of bad luck. While casually speaking with his mother at the table, Koharu continues holding a silent mental conversation with his father at the same time. His father eventually apologizes and promises that he will stop gambling after this. However, Koharu does not believe him at all because he hears the same excuse almost every month. Koharu warns him that their mother deserves to know about the money he loses again. The two of them suddenly stay silent for too long while communicating through their minds. Koharu's mother slowly narrows her eyes in suspicion as she notices the strange atmosphere around the table. She asks whether they are secretly talking to each other with telepathy again instead of having a normal conversation. Koharu's father instantly panics. He hurriedly claims that nothing like that is happening and says he is only thinking about how delicious the food tastes tonight. At the same moment, his thoughts desperately beg Koharu not to expose him. Without hesitation, Koharu reveals that his father loses another 10,000 yen and falls into gambling trouble again. His mother immediately becomes angry. Meanwhile, Koharu's father desperately tries to defend himself by insisting that Koharu exaggerates the entire situation. His mother completely ignores the excuse and calmly announces that she will personally cook for everyone next weekend as punishment. The color instantly drains from both Koharu's and his father's faces. Although his father forces a weak smile and pretends to sound happy about it, his thoughts scream for Koharu to stop her before it is too late. Koharu silently agrees with him because he still remembers the rice balls his mother once made that nearly destroyed both of their stomachs. After seeing their reactions, Koharu's mother sighs sadly and admits that she sometimes wishes she could also communicate through thoughts like the two of them. Koharu and his father immediately reject the idea in perfect synchronization. Both of them think telepathy is far more troublesome than useful. The next morning arrives, and it is finally time for school. The moment Koharu enters his classroom, countless thoughts from the students around him flood into his head all at once. Some students think he looks scary, while others quietly judge him for always glaring at people with his naturally sharp eyes. A few even compare him to a delinquent or a street punk simply because of his intimidating face. Koharu hears those kinds of thoughts every single day. Over time, the constant noise completely exhausts him. Sometimes, he feels like abandoning society altogether and living somewhere isolated where no voices or thoughts can ever reach him. If he ever saves enough money, he dreams of moving to a quiet island far away from everyone else. When lunch break finally arrives, Koharu escapes to the schoolyard with his food and sits alone beneath a tree. The peaceful silence only lasts for a few moments before another familiar voice suddenly enters his mind. The thoughts belong to the same girl he saved from the arcade thugs earlier. Her thoughts are unbelievably loud. A short distance away, the girl stares at him with surprise after realizing that the boy who helped her at the arcade actually attends the same school as her. She slowly walks toward him while nervously bowing her head. At the same time, her mind races uncontrollably. She keeps thinking about how frightening Koharu appears at first glance, despite actually being gentle and kind underneath. She debates whether she should properly thank him again or leave him alone. Deep down, however, she realizes that she simply wants an excuse to talk with him longer. Her thoughts soon become even more chaotic when she considers offering him the homemade egg roll inside her lunchbox. The idea embarrasses her almost instantly because sharing homemade food with a boy she barely knows feels far too bold. Koharu grows mentally exhausted, listening to her endless overthinking. Even so, he prefers hearing her nervous thoughts over the painful way she constantly insults herself in her own mind. The girl continues standing there awkwardly while debating whether she should ask to eat lunch with him. At the same time, she imagines him rejecting her request and humiliating her completely in front of everyone nearby. Her thoughts spiral further and further until she internally calls herself pathetic for struggling with such a simple decision. Unable to endure her panic any longer, Koharu finally speaks first and invites her to sit beside him for lunch. The girl immediately blushes. Her thoughts become even louder as she starts admiring how kind and considerate he is despite his cold appearance. Koharu hears every single thought clearly and struggles to ignore them. Meanwhile, the girl desperately searches for the perfect conversation topic. She considers discussing lunch, manga, books, relationships, and even hobbies. After overthinking every possible option for far too long, she eventually settles on the safest topic imaginable. She awkwardly comments about how nice the weather feels today. Koharu stares at her in confusion after hearing the dozens of interesting topics she considered in her mind, only for her to choose the most ordinary one possible. The moment she realizes what she says aloud, panic instantly fills her thoughts again. She becomes convinced that she sounds boring, awkward, and completely uninteresting. Wanting to help her relax, Koharu asks whether she often eats lunch in the backyard. The girl quickly nods and explains that she comes there whenever the weather is nice and it is not raining outside. After calming down slightly, she finally introduces herself properly. Her name is Yuki Yatsutase. Yuki is a first-year student, and during lunch break, Koharu introduces himself to her. He tells her that he is also a first-year student, just like her. Hearing that immediately feels like a huge success to Yuki. Inside her mind, she celebrates the fact that she managed to introduce herself to him without embarrassing herself completely. As they sit together, Yuki cannot stop staring at him. Her thoughts continue running non-stop. She keeps admiring his sharp nose, his beautiful eyes, and his messy hair. Every little detail about him catches her attention. The more she looks at him, the more fascinated she becomes. Koharu hears every single one of her thoughts. Instead of feeling happy, he becomes extremely uneasy. The constant praise makes him embarrassed and shy. He tries his best to ignore her thoughts, but hearing them directly inside his head makes it impossible. To escape the awkwardness, he starts eating his lunch quickly. Within moments, he finishes everything. Yuki continues staring at him quietly while he avoids eye contact. Feeling overwhelmed, Koharu tells her that he is leaving and says that she should enjoy the rest of her meal. Yuki says goodbye with a visibly sad expression. Since Koharu can read her mind, he immediately hears her disappointment. She keeps eating while thinking about how delicious the egg rolls she made are. At the same time, she desperately wants to stop him from leaving. She wants to continue talking to him for a little longer. However, she is also afraid of looking creepy or annoying in front of him. As Koharu prepares to leave, his eyes fall on her lunchbox. He notices the egg rolls inside. Koharu is skilled at cooking for himself, especially when it comes to making egg rolls. Because of that, he becomes curious about Yuki's cooking. He wonders how someone their age could make them so well. A part of him genuinely wants to try one. However, he barely knows her. Asking for her food would feel strange and awkward. Because of that, he convinces himself that it will never happen. Meanwhile, Yuki continues thinking about stopping him. While watching him, she keeps noticing his slightly puffy cheeks and finds them adorable. Koharu intentionally stays silent. He is terrified of accidentally revealing his ability to read minds. If Yuki realizes that he has been hearing her thoughts this entire time, he believes she would completely panic. Unable to gather courage, Yuki finally gives up and starts eating her lunch quickly. After finishing almost everything, she quietly says that she is already full. One egg roll remains inside her lunchbox. Koharu immediately understands what she is trying to do. She is allowing him to take it without directly offering it herself. At that moment, Koharu feels slightly guilty. He realizes that she is braver than he is. Even though he wanted to ask earlier, he could not make the first move. After hesitating for a moment, Koharu walks back toward her and asks if he can have the remaining egg roll. Yuki immediately looks up at him and offers it to him without hesitation. He takes a bite. The moment he tastes it, he becomes genuinely surprised. The egg roll is soft, fluffy, and perfectly seasoned. He cannot believe someone their age can cook this well. As someone who takes pride in his own cooking skills, he instantly recognizes how good it is. Yuki hears his compliment and immediately becomes shy. Her face grows warm as she quietly thinks about how cute he looks while eating. The moment Koharu hears those thoughts, embarrassment rushes through him again. Unable to handle it, he reacts harshly out of panic. In an irritated voice, he asks her if she has a problem with him. Before Yuki can react properly, he quickly leaves. It is only a defensive reaction caused by embarrassment, but the moment he walks away, Koharu realizes he should not have spoken to her like that. Later, during class, the teacher continues teaching the lesson normally. At one point, the teacher accidentally misses an important detail while explaining something on the board. Immediately, one of the students starts insulting her internally and laughing at her mistake. Koharu hears those thoughts clearly. To him, the darkness inside people's hearts feels like poison. Every single day, those ugly thoughts force their way into his mind without permission. Lies, insults, jealousy, hatred, and fake kindness surround him constantly. Because of that, Koharu no longer becomes disappointed in people. He already expects the worst from them. At the same time, he understands what that means for himself. If he can hear the ugliness hidden inside everyone's hearts, then he can never truly trust anyone enough to love them. As those thoughts fill his mind, he suddenly remembers a girl from his past. On the outside, she had acted cheerful and loving during their 1-month anniversary. When Koharu gave her a present, she smiled brightly and thanked him happily. But inside her mind, she had been thinking about how sick and tired she already was of him. That memory remains deeply carved into Koharu's heart, reminding him why he refuses to believe in love anymore. Koharu quietly walks through the hallway while painful memories continue filling his mind. The memory of his former girlfriend smiling at him while secretly being tired of him keeps repeating inside his head again and again. No matter how hard he tries to forget it, the feeling remains deeply stuck inside him. The more he thinks about it, the more overwhelmed he becomes. To Koharu, love only leads to disappointment in the end. People act kindly at first, but eventually they grow tired, bored, or hateful. Since he can hear the hidden thoughts inside people's minds, he understands this better than anyone else. Because of that, he slowly reaches a painful conclusion. If people are only going to hate him in the end, then it would be better if they never loved him from the beginning. It would hurt less if they hated him immediately instead of pretending to care first. As these thoughts continue consuming him, he suddenly remembers Yuki. He still does not understand what Yuki truly wants from him. Her thoughts are always full of admiration and affection toward him, but Koharu refuses to believe in feelings like that anymore. He does not want to trust her, and more importantly, he does not want to fall in love. So, he makes a decision. He decides that he will avoid Yuki from now on and never see her again, if possible. Soon, the final bell rings, signaling the end of the school day. Students begin leaving their classrooms while talking loudly with friends. As Koharu quietly starts walking toward the school entrance, a teacher suddenly calls out to him from behind. She asks him whether he has joined a club yet. Koharu calmly answers that he has not found one yet. However, that is not the real reason. In truth, Koharu simply dislikes being around people. Joining a club means spending time with others constantly, and that is the last thing he wants. The teacher immediately tells him that every student must join a club eventually. Without giving him much time to react, she begins recommending her own club to him, the Regional Research Club. She explains that she is the advisor of the club and asks him to join. Koharu does not find the idea interesting at all. To him, it sounds boring and unnecessary. However, the teacher continues pleading with him sincerely. While listening to her words, Koharu also hears the thoughts hidden inside her mind. Ever since she was a student herself, people have constantly called her stupid and incompetent. Even now, many teachers and students secretly make fun of her behind her back. They believe she cannot accomplish anything meaningful. The Regional Research Club is the only thing she truly treasures. To her, the club is like a small paradise where she can finally prove herself. She wants to create something meaningful with her students and show everyone that she is capable of succeeding too. However, the club currently lacks enough members to remain active. If another student does not join soon, the school will shut it down completely. That is why she desperately wants Koharu to join. After hearing all those honest thoughts inside her mind, Koharu finds himself unable to refuse her. Eventually, he quietly agrees and says that he will join the club. The teacher instantly becomes overjoyed. Koharu tells himself that he would have needed to join some club eventually anyway, so helping her is not a bad choice. While they continue talking, Koharu suddenly hears a loud thought nearby. "Soft and fluffy man." The moment he hears those words, he immediately recognizes the owner of the thought, Yuki. The teacher waves at Yuki and calls her over excitedly. Once she arrives, the teacher happily announces that she has finally found the club's second member. She introduces Koharu to Yuki once again and cheerfully tells them to get along well together. Koharu freezes after realizing that Yuki is already part of the same club. Even after deciding to avoid her completely, he somehow ends up being placed right beside her again. Yuki is also surprised by the unexpected situation. However, unlike Koharu, hope immediately begins blooming inside her heart. To her, this feels like the beginning of something special, almost like spring finally arriving after a long winter. Meanwhile, Koharu still believes that he can never fulfill Yuki's romantic fantasies. Determined to escape, he immediately tries telling the teacher that perhaps joining the club is not actually a good idea after all. But then, he hesitates. Koharu once again hears the thoughts inside the teacher's mind. She is feeling genuinely happy because, for the first time in a long while, she finally feels hopeful again. The Regional Research Club is precious to her, and now that she has managed to get another member, she feels like she finally has something meaningful to live for. Hearing those honest thoughts makes it impossible for Koharu to reject her offer anymore. He cannot bring himself to destroy the small happiness she has finally found, so he simply goes along with everything quietly. At the same time, he starts thinking about Yuki again. Now that both of them are in the same club, avoiding her completely will become impossible. Since he cannot stay away from her physically, he decides that the only thing he can do is maintain emotional distance between them. He convinces himself that as long as he does not get close to her, nothing dangerous will happen. Meanwhile, Yuki is already determined to become closer to him in the future. Even though they barely know each other, she secretly dreams about building a friendship with him little by little. Koharu ignores all of those thoughts on purpose. He keeps reminding himself that he needs to stay away from her emotionally. However, Yuki misunderstands his distant behavior completely. Instead of thinking that he dislikes her, she starts overthinking every little thing. She wonders if she accidentally annoyed him earlier or if she talked too much. She begins convincing herself that maybe they are simply not close enough yet. Hearing those anxious thoughts hurts Koharu more than he expects. Still, he forces himself to stay cold. He tells himself that getting close to her will only hurt her in the future anyway. If he truly wants her to stay away from him, then the simplest solution is to make her hate him before she falls any deeper in love. From that moment onward, Koharu becomes fully determined to make Yuki dislike him. As they walk home together after school, Koharu decides to start putting his plan into action immediately. Using his ability to read minds, he already understands how people react emotionally and what annoys them the most. Because of that, he starts behaving strangely on purpose. He suddenly calls out Yuki's name while walking beside her. Instead of being annoyed, Yuki immediately becomes happy simply because he remembered her name. Koharu internally feels frustrated, but he continues with his plan anyway. He starts acting overly dramatic and weird while pointing toward a nearby cafe. He repeatedly asks her if she knows about the cafe while making strange comments and ridiculous jokes about coffee. Yuki has never paid attention to the cafe before, but instead of being creeped out, she becomes fascinated. In her mind, she starts thinking about how rare it is nowadays to meet someone who actually likes puns and silly humor. Koharu confidently believes his trick is finally working, but then he hears her next thoughts. She thinks that he is unique, funny, and unexpectedly charming. She even finds it cute that he likes coffee so much. The moment Koharu hears that, he realizes that he has completely underestimated Yuki. Still, he refuses to give up. He tells himself that he still has many other ways to make her hate him. Just as he is about to continue his strange act, he suddenly notices that Yuki is no longer walking beside him. Koharu immediately turns around. A random man has stopped Yuki on the sidewalk. The stranger is speaking aggressively while standing too close to her. Yuki looks visibly uncomfortable and scared. Koharu instantly hears the thoughts inside the stranger's mind. The man wrongly assumes that Yuki is interested in him simply because she looked nervous while talking to him. He starts thinking arrogantly about taking her somewhere with him later. The stranger suddenly invites Yuki to go to a bar with him sometime. Yuki becomes even more frightened. Even in that situation, Koharu can still hear her chaotic thoughts wandering toward completely unrelated things out of panic. The stranger eventually crosses the line and tells Yuki to come with him because his car is parked nearby. The moment those thoughts reach Koharu, he immediately steps forward without hesitation. He grabs Yuki's hand firmly. She freezes in shock from the sudden action. Without even looking at the stranger properly, Koharu pulls her closer and acts as if he has been looking for her the entire time. He tells her that she should not wander around alone and starts walking away while still holding her hand. Yuki silently follows him. Behind them, the stranger remains standing there awkwardly, wondering whether Koharu is her boyfriend or if both of them planned the situation together just to embarrass him. As they continue walking away, Koharu cannot help wondering why Yuki always seems to attract trouble so easily. He does not know whether she simply has terrible luck or if people constantly target her because of how timid she looks. At that moment, Yuki's mind suddenly becomes completely silent. Koharu grows confused because the stranger never physically hurt her, yet she is no longer thinking about anything at all. Then, after a few moments, he finally hears her thoughts again. She is becoming shy. Her heart is racing because Koharu is holding her hand. Inside her mind, she keeps thinking about how much she likes him and how deeply she loves him already. Only then does Koharu realize that he is still tightly holding her hand. At the same moment, an elderly couple walking nearby notices them together. The old woman smiles warmly and comments about how adorable they both look together. Her husband laughs softly and says that they remind him of themselves when they were younger. Hearing that instantly makes Koharu flustered. Embarrassed, he quickly lets go of Yuki's hand and apologizes awkwardly. Yuki immediately thanks him sincerely for saving her again. Hearing those words makes Koharu feel even more embarrassed. Just moments ago, he was trying to make her hate him, yet somehow the exact opposite happened again. To make things worse, Yuki looks unbelievably cute while thanking him so honestly. For a brief moment, Koharu catches himself thinking that she really is adorable, and the fact that she genuinely likes him starts affecting his heart more than he wants to admit. That realization scares him. He immediately reminds himself of the promise he made long ago. He swore that he would never fall in love again. He cannot simply throw away those beliefs now. While he struggles with those thoughts internally, Yuki softly thanks him once more. Koharu quietly looks away. Deep inside, he realizes that he might already be losing this battle. Still, he refuses to surrender. He tells himself that someday he will turn everything around somehow. Even if things continue like this, he will make sure the ending becomes a beautiful breakup for Yuki instead. No matter what happens, he remains determined to make her hate him in the end. Koharu, because of his past experiences, does not want to fall in love. He also does not want Yuki to fall in love with him. But she already loves him deeply, and her feelings for him continue to grow stronger every day. Inside the cafe, the coffee arrives at their table. Yuki quietly thinks about how strange and sudden everything feels. She cannot believe that she is actually sitting in a cafe with Koharu and drinking coffee with him. Even though everything happens so suddenly, she feels happy. Koharu hears all of her thoughts and secretly feels pleased because he believes his plan is working. He thinks that if he keeps acting cold and unpleasant, Yuki will eventually start hating him. Because of that, he keeps making mean and intimidating expressions toward her. However, Yuki still cannot stop admiring him. In her mind, she thinks that even if someone takes away 1-0 from him, he is still a perfect 10. Koharu quietly tells himself that she will regret these feelings soon. At the same time, the waiters and waitresses in the cafe become nervous because of Koharu's scary expressions. They quietly worry about Yuki, who is sitting calmly in front of him. Meanwhile, she peacefully finishes her coffee without showing any fear. By the time they are done, it is already becoming night, so Koharu says that they should leave. The receptionist brings them the bill. When it is time to pay, he suddenly says that he needs to use the restroom. He leaves without paying and intentionally stays there for a long time. Yuki is left standing awkwardly at the register while waiting for him. Koharu believes that anyone in that situation would become irritated and frustrated. In his mind, he imagines Yuki getting angry when he returns. He expects her to complain about him leaving the bill for her and taking so long in the restroom. Thinking that everything is going according to plan, Koharu continues staying in the restroom for a while longer. After hearing that Yuki has already paid the bill, he finally comes out and casually asks her if she paid for it. Yuki calmly answers that she already has. The two of them leave the cafe together. But her thoughts are completely different from what Koharu imagined. Instead of feeling annoyed, she keeps thinking about how she has never gone to a cafe before. The experience feels new and special to her. More than anything, she feels happy because her first cafe visit happened with Koharu. Hearing no complaint from her, Koharu becomes frustrated and directly asks if she has something she wants to say to him. Yuki gently bows her head and thanks him for taking her there. Once again, Koharu is left completely surprised by her behavior. As they continue walking together, Koharu suddenly asks Yuki if she really has no problem with the fact that he never paid her back for the cafe bill. Yuki immediately tells him that it is completely fine. Inside her mind, however, she is thinking that she never planned to make him pay in the first place. To her, paying for him was simply a way to thank him for saving her earlier and for taking her to the cafe. Koharu cannot understand her behavior at all. He starts thinking that perhaps she is simply rich enough that the cafe bill means nothing to her. But then his eyes notice a phone number written on her hand. He asks her what the number is. Yuki quickly says that it is not important. At the same time, Koharu hears her actual thoughts. Earlier, she noticed a hiring poster at the cafe for part-time workers and secretly copied the contact number onto her hand. She does not want Koharu to know, because then he would realize that she is struggling financially. Paying for him was her own choice, and she does not want him to feel guilty or worried about her. Hearing that immediately makes Koharu feel bad. Meanwhile, Yuki keeps thinking about how she wants to save enough money to buy a smartphone someday. She wants one mainly so she can ask for Koharu's number properly because she knows she is not going to stop liking him anytime soon. Our lad grows exhausted listening to all these thoughts. He does not know what he is supposed to do anymore. Still, he refuses to give up. In his mind, he keeps convincing himself that pushing her away now is kinder than letting her continue loving someone who can never return her feelings properly. At that point, he decides to use the one method he had desperately wanted to avoid. He plans to reveal his ability. Koharu thinks that if he tells Yuki he can read minds and starts revealing her thoughts directly, she will definitely hate him after that. As he prepares himself to say it, she barely notices his serious expression because she is busy daydreaming again. She starts imagining romantic moments with him and immediately becomes embarrassed by her own thoughts. At the same time, she worries that Koharu would get angry if he ever learned what goes on inside her head. Hearing all of this makes Koharu hesitate. Still, he tells himself that sacrifices must be made. Even if revealing his power is risky, it is necessary now. He opens his mouth, almost ready to confess everything. Then he hears Yuki's next thoughts. She is silently imagining future names in her head, wondering whether Yuki Sanada sounds better or Koharu Yuki. The moment Koharu hears that, his entire face burns red with embarrassment. He immediately gives up on the idea of revealing his ability. There is absolutely no way he can let her realize that he has been hearing thoughts like those the entire time. Just imagining her reaction makes him want to disappear from existence. A bird flies across the sky above them while the two continue walking quietly through the park. Koharu already feels mentally exhausted just from being around her. Every loving thought she has toward him fills him with guilt and confusion. Meanwhile, Yuki continues thinking about him in the sweetest possible ways without even realizing it. Eventually, they reach a turn in the road where they need to separate. Koharu asks which direction she is going, and they realize they both live in opposite directions. It is finally time to part ways. Koharu tells her that he is heading the other way now. Both of them quietly say goodbye. However, inside Yuki's mind, she is still thinking about how she has not spent enough time with him yet. She wants to stay with him longer, but she cannot bring herself to say it aloud. Koharu feels relieved. For the first time that day, he thinks he is finally free from her overwhelming thoughts. Then suddenly, Yuki calls out to him from behind. He instantly becomes nervous. He immediately assumes that she is about to confess her feelings directly, but Yuki simply thanks him for today. She tells him that she feels like she will remember this day forever. As she says those words with a bright smile on her face, Koharu's heart completely loses control. Hearing her feelings spoken aloud affects him far more deeply than simply hearing her thoughts ever did. He becomes extremely embarrassed. At the same time, she also grows shy because saying something like that out loud almost feels like a confession to her. Meanwhile, Koharu desperately tries to calm himself down. He keeps reminding himself that he does not like her and that he should not become this excited over a few words. After forcing himself to regain composure, he coldly tells her that she should actually forget about today. Yuki's expression immediately falls. Koharu continues speaking with a deliberately mean look on his face. He says that nothing special even happened. He simply helped her out and took her to a cafe. According to him, it was nothing important at all. Yuki quietly accepts his words, though she clearly looks hurt. Koharu says goodbye once again, and Yuki softly replies before both of them begin walking away in opposite directions. Then, after only a few steps, Koharu suddenly stops. Koharu suddenly turns around and calls out to Yuki. She quickly looks back at him. Avoiding eye contact, he quietly tells her that next time, he will pay for her instead. Yuki instantly lights up with happiness. In her mind, she repeats the same thought over and over: there will be a next time. To her, his words mean that they will see each other again soon. Meanwhile, Koharu immediately regrets saying it. He thinks promising something like that was unnecessary. Still, he does not want to feel indebted to her forever after she paid for him at the cafe. As they walk away from each other, a suspicious girl watches them from a nearby rooftop. The same bird that had been flying above Koharu and Yuki lands on her hand and silently reports everything it saw and heard. After listening, the girl completely misunderstands the situation. She assumes a delinquent forced Yuki to accompany him, dragged her to a cafe, and even made her pay the bill. Narrowing her eyes, the girl quietly mutters that he may soon become troublesome, muttering that she's got a new pest to deal with. Koharu keeps giving Yuki chances to stay in touch again, yet he still cannot understand how things end up this way. While walking through the crowd, he suddenly hears an unusually loud stream of thoughts. His expression turns suspicious immediately because only Yuki thinks this loudly. More of her thoughts pour into his mind. Yuki notices him from behind and admires his broad shoulders and messy hair. Even in the morning, her thoughts remain impossibly energetic. She debates whether she should thank him again for yesterday, but she also worries that if she keeps creating excuses to talk to him, he will definitely realize that she is in love with him. Still, deep down, she genuinely wants to speak with him. Koharu grows irritated by her thoughts. She already pays for his drinks, and now she plans to thank him again. If she does that, he feels like the worst person alive. Wanting to avoid her, he quickly tries to leave the area. Watching him walk away, Yuki admires how strong his legs look and how fast he moves. Koharu becomes even more annoyed because no matter what he does, she somehow likes him more. As he walks, Koharu reminds himself that he seriously needs to focus on his plan to make Yuki hate him. While thinking about that, he suddenly catches another person's thoughts. A creepy-looking guy nearby stares at Yuki while thinking about how sexy she is and how attractive her thighs look. The man plans to stop her once he finds her alone. Koharu hears every disturbing thought clearly. The creepy guy waits for Yuki to approach, preparing to make a move. Before he can act, Koharu steps in front of him and shoots him a cold glare. The man immediately loses his nerve and backs away in fear. Since Koharu slows down to protect Yuki, she accidentally bumps into him. Confused, she wonders when he suddenly appears beside her. Meanwhile, Koharu feels frustrated because no matter how hard he tries to avoid her, he cannot leave her alone when so many creeps surround her. The two begin walking together. Yuki thanks him once again, but before the conversation continues, a loud, cheerful voice interrupts them. A girl enthusiastically leads the school's morning greeting campaign while standing beside several exhausted students holding greeting banners. She loudly encourages everyone to greet the arriving students with more energy, although she is clearly the only one genuinely cheerful this early in the morning. Koharu quietly observes her and wonders how someone can possess that much energy before classes even begin. The class president notices Yuki and immediately brightens up. She excitedly greets Yuki-chan while hurrying toward them. Her name is Marin Hike. Marin shoots a sharp glare toward Koharu before softening completely when facing Yuki. She happily mentions how nice it feels to see Yuki arriving early in the morning. Yuki warmly praises her dedication and mentions how impressive it is to see her working so hard before school starts. Marin proudly declares that fulfilling her duties as class president is simply part of her responsibility. However, Koharu hears her hidden thoughts. Deep inside, Marin feels miserable because everyone else secretly considers the morning greeting campaign pointless. She knows the other students laugh at her behind her back for taking it so seriously, yet she continues anyway because she believes it is her duty as class president. Meanwhile, Yuki continues praising her sincerely and even offers to help whenever Moran needs anything. Hearing that, Moran's thoughts immediately overflow with affection for Yuki. She thinks Yuki looks unbelievably cute and admits that she is completely obsessed with her. Even though she hates the exhausting morning routine, she endures it happily because it allows her to see Yuki every day. At the same time, Marin harshly compares herself to Yuki. Simply standing beside Yuki reminds her of how plain and unattractive she believes herself to be. After hearing all of those thoughts, Koharu realizes that Moran is not naturally overflowing with energy at all. She only forces herself to act cheerful. In Moran's mind, Yuki appears absolutely perfect, almost like an angel. She feels both grateful and guilty that someone as wonderful as Yuki willingly spends time talking to someone she considers an ugly duckling. Koharu quietly attempts to leave since the conversation has nothing to do with him, but Marin suddenly stops Yuki and asks about the new club member. She mentions hearing that their club no longer faces disbandment because someone new has joined. Then she points toward Koharu and asks whether he is the new member. Yuki happily confirms that Koharu joins their club. Maran immediately studies him with suspicion before stepping closer and introducing herself properly as Marin Haikei, Yuki's childhood friend and neighbor. Outwardly, she enthusiastically claims that she is delighted to meet Sanada Koharu. Inside her mind, however, an entirely different storm rages. She bitterly wonders why Koharu gets to join Yuki's club before she even manages to invite Yuki to a cafe herself. In her darker thoughts, she dramatically decides that Koharu deserves to suffer painfully for stealing all of these precious moments from her. Koharu immediately wonders how Marin knows about all those moments with Yuki when nobody ever tells her anything. Yuki herself has not even mentioned those events to Marin yet. As Koharu listens more carefully, Moran's thoughts grow increasingly hostile. She bitterly thinks about how someone like Koharu dares to crawl toward Yuki-chan's holy light like an insect. In her mind, even his face resembles that of a villain. Koharu cannot understand why she dislikes him so intensely. Still, he does not dwell on it too much. Ever since accepting the truth about his bloodline, he has stopped caring about romance or how others judge him. At the same time, Koharu decides that he will eventually prove how harmless and uninterested he truly is when it comes to Yuki. Maran suddenly tells Yuki that she needs to speak privately with Koharu and asks her to head ahead first. Yuki immediately looks disappointed, but she quietly agrees and leaves the area, leaving the two of them alone. After Yuki disappears, Moran lowers her voice suspiciously and suggests that they continue their conversation inside the school building. Koharu enters the empty room and waits, but instead of Marin, Yuki suddenly walks inside. Koharu freezes in surprise. Yuki innocently asks why Koharu-kun is standing there, and Koharu immediately questions why she is entering the room as well. Yuki shyly explains that Marin-chan tells her to come here. Her speech becomes unusually soft and hesitant. Then she nervously admits that she wants to tell him something important about her true feelings. Koharu instantly becomes flustered. His heart races as he mistakenly assumes that Yuki is about to confess her love to him. However, Yuki calmly delivers completely different words. She coldly tells him to stop talking to her because he gives her the creeps. The moment those words reach him, Koharu remembers his ex-girlfriend saying the same thing to him in the past. Yuki continues speaking with a strange expression on her face. She admits that he is probably a good person, so she can overlook his terrible jokes and the incident where he runs off to the restroom and leaves her to pay at the cafe. But even so, she bluntly tells him that he is annoying and demands that he never show his face to her again. She also tells him to quit the club immediately. Koharu becomes deeply confused because something feels completely wrong. The girl standing in front of him looks exactly like Yuki, sounds exactly like Yuki, and even copies her mannerisms perfectly, yet her behavior feels unnatural. Finally, Koharu realizes the truth. He calmly asks why Maran dresses up like Yuki and imitates her. Maran immediately loses composure. Shock floods her face because she cannot understand how Koharu sees through her disguise. Her illusion perfectly copies Yuki's appearance, voice, habits, and expressions. Meanwhile, Koharu also realizes that this is no ordinary trick. The illusion is far too realistic to be something simple. At that moment, he begins suspecting that Maran belongs to a special bloodline too. Koharu immediately questions her about how she knows every detail regarding his meetings with Yuki, including their cafe visit and private conversations that nobody else should know about. Instead of answering properly, Marin casually avoids the subject. Then she drops the illusion completely and returns to her real appearance. With a cold expression, she quietly declares that everything ends there because she has no choice but to kill him. While hearing her thoughts, Koharu grows exhausted. First the creep near the school gate, and now Marin. Yuki somehow keeps attracting dangerous people wherever she goes. At the same time, Koharu realizes that Marin genuinely believes she is protecting Yuki. In her mind, Koharu represents a threat that must disappear before Yuki ever notices anything suspicious. Marin desperately wants to hide her obsession and dark intentions from Yuki forever. After hearing all of those thoughts clearly, Koharu concludes that Marin is far crazier than he originally imagined. Marin suddenly pulls out a sword and shifts into a ninja-like stance. Koharu immediately becomes cautious and quietly opens the nearby window. Just as he expects, Marin throws a smoke bomb into the room. Because the window remains open, most of the smoke quickly escapes outside. Marin notices this and realizes the smoke screen will only last a few seconds, but she still believes that gives her enough time to beat him down. Even then, she secretly uses only the blunt side of the sword because she never truly intends to kill him. In her mind, Koharu probably freezes in terror already. Instead, Koharu calmly catches the blade with his bare hand through the smoke. Marin becomes completely stunned. She cannot understand how he identifies the blunt edge inside such thick smoke. Seeing through her illusion already shocks her enough, but now he even tracks her movements perfectly in zero visibility. At that moment, Marin begins suspecting that Koharu also belongs to a special bloodline. Hearing her thoughts, Koharu quickly decides to distract her before she figures out the truth about him, so he casually comments that she resembles a real ninja with her swordsmanship, smoke bombs, strange poses, and illusion techniques. Marin immediately denies everything. She coldly claims that Koharu simply reads too much manga and starts imagining ridiculous fantasies. Inside her mind, however, panic spreads rapidly. If Koharu discovers the existence of her illusion ninja bloodline that secretly operates for generations, things will become extremely troublesome for her. Koharu silently processes everything. He had never heard about illusion ninjas before, and certainly never expected someone like that to attend the same school as him. He also notices that Marin deliberately acts overly dramatic while trying to maintain a low profile and avoid attracting attention. Marin finally backs away and arrogantly warns him that he now understands how terrifying she truly is. Unfortunately for her, the smoke bomb badly irritates her face. Her cheeks turn bright red and she begins sneezing non-stop. Completely embarrassed, she decides to escape immediately. Koharu quickly tries to stop her and warns her not to open the door yet. Marin ignores him completely. The moment she opens the classroom door, her body freezes. Yuki stands directly outside the room, staring suspiciously at both of them. Both Koharu and Marin freeze the moment they see Yuki standing outside the classroom door. Marin immediately forces herself to stay calm and speaks in a surprised yet suspicious tone as she asks Yuki why she suddenly appears there. Yuki casually explains that a teacher sent her to call Koharu for club activities, so she comes looking for him. The moment Yuki finishes speaking, Marin secretly begins scolding the small bird perched nearby. Through quiet signals and subtle whispers, she angrily demands to know why the bird fails to keep an eye on Yuki and inform her earlier. Koharu silently watches the exchange and immediately gains another piece of information. Not only do illusion ninjas exist, but they can also communicate with birds and use them as scouts. At the same time, Koharu hears Yuki's true thoughts. Inside her mind, Yuki panics because she completely lied just now. No teacher sends her anywhere. She simply invents an excuse because she worries that Marin might steal Koharu away from her. The thought alone makes Yuki feel horrible. She internally scolds herself for becoming jealous of her own best friend. In her eyes, Marin is prettier, more cheerful, more confident, and far more popular with boys than she is. Even so, Yuki still searches through the entire school looking for them. Now she feels clingy and annoying. She even compares herself to a stalker and starts believing that she is becoming a terrible person. Hearing all those thoughts, Koharu immediately disagrees in his mind. Yuki should never think such awful things about herself. Compared to the real stalker standing beside him, Yuki looks completely innocent. Meanwhile, Yuki nervously glances between the two of them before quietly asking what they are doing alone inside the classroom. Even while asking, she secretly wishes she had never brought it up at all. Koharu quickly notices her growing anxiety and immediately tries to clear up the misunderstanding. He calmly starts explaining that she does not need to misunderstand anything because they are simply, but before he can finish speaking, Marin suddenly cuts him off with a terrifying glare. In a cold and threatening voice, she warns him that if he says anything unnecessary, she will kill him. Marin desperately does not want Yuki to discover that she secretly watches over her all the time. Unfortunately, the threatening tone and suspicious atmosphere only make everything sound far worse. Realizing her mistake, Marin hurriedly tries to fix the situation. She awkwardly tells Yuki that nothing bad happens inside the classroom and insists that they are not doing anything suspicious. Instead of calming Yuki down, the explanation only makes her expression dimmer. Marin nervously laughs while avoiding direct eye contact with her. Koharu immediately grows worried after hearing Yuki's thoughts. Deep inside, Yuki remains completely unconvinced. She becomes certain that the two of them definitely hide something from her. Koharu starts feeling genuinely irritated with Marin because her strange behavior keeps making the misunderstanding worse. At the same time, Marin also feels conflicted. She hates lying to Yuki, but in her mind, protecting her matters more than honesty. Against dangerous bloodlines, ordinary methods simply are not enough. The moment Marin thinks about bloodlines, Koharu suddenly becomes stunned. He realizes something completely unexpected. Yuki also belongs to a special bloodline. Koharu stares at her in disbelief while wondering what kind of terrifying people actually attend this school. After creating complete chaos, Marin quickly retreats and awkwardly claims she needs to return to class duties. The moment she disappears, an uncomfortable silence settles between Koharu and Yuki. Koharu quietly studies Yuki while organizing his thoughts. No matter how many strange people he meets lately, Yuki still feels different. She carries herself with elegance and refinement, almost like the daughter of a wealthy family. Her posture is graceful, her uniform always neat, and she rarely shows strong emotions openly. As Koharu stares at her, nearby students begin giving him suspicious looks. From their perspective, he just stands there intensely staring at a girl. Koharu ignores them completely. Meanwhile, Yuki's thoughts spiral out of control. She becomes convinced that Koharu and Marin are hiding something suspicious after both of them panicked earlier and refused to explain themselves properly. The more she thinks about it, the worse her imagination becomes. Koharu hears every insecure thought clearly, but he has no idea how to explain the truth without sounding even stranger. At the same time, another thought lingers in his mind. Yuki belongs to a special bloodline too. Still, after everything that just happened, he decides this is definitely not the right time to ask about it. Soon, the bell rings for break. A few moments later, their club advisor enters the classroom and calls Koharu over. The instant Koharu looks at the teacher, he realizes something is wrong. It is Marin again, disguised through another illusion. The fake teacher calmly says they need to discuss club matters and asks him to follow her. Koharu immediately grows irritated seeing her pull the same trick again. Meanwhile, Marin secretly wonders why Koharu can see through her disguises so easily. She starts suspecting he may also belong to a special bloodline. If he truly possesses abilities, he could become dangerous to Yuki. Because of that, she decides to confirm the truth before deciding what to do with him. Hearing this only annoys Koharu more. He has never harmed anyone and only wants to live peacefully while hiding his abilities. Eventually, Koharu, Yuki, and the fake teacher head toward the clubroom together. The staircase upstairs is narrow, forcing Koharu and Yuki to walk close together. Yuki immediately becomes flustered by the closeness and avoids looking directly at him. Once they enter the clubroom, the fake teacher turns serious and announces that before Koharu officially joins the club, she needs to confirm something first. She directly asks whether he was the one who saved Yuki at the game center. Then she points out how close he has become to Yuki ever since and bluntly asks if he is secretly stalking her. Koharu feels another wave of frustration. At this point, Marin clearly knows every detail about the incident, making her look far more like the real stalker. The fake teacher smiles warmly and explains that one-sided romance inside the club is forbidden because it creates awkwardness, especially for Yuki. Yuki awkwardly agrees, suddenly realizing how suspicious everything must look from the outside. Then the teacher lovingly praises Yuki for being such an elegant young lady while moving far too close and clinging to her affectionately. Koharu watches in disbelief. Marin completely forgets she is disguised as a teacher and acts overly attached to Yuki. Calmly, Koharu denies all the accusations and insists there is nothing to worry about. At the same time, he hears Yuki's thoughts again. She still suspects Koharu and Marin might secretly like each other and even considers cornering Marin later for answers. Koharu becomes mentally exhausted. The fake teacher continues questioning him and suddenly mentions the suspicious man Koharu scared away near the school gate earlier that morning. Teasingly, she asks if he is overly possessive of Yuki. Yuki instantly turns red. She never realized Koharu had quietly protected her, and the thought softens her feelings toward him even more. The fake teacher keeps teasing him, pointing out how often he watches Yuki during class. Koharu finally narrows his eyes and remarks that the teacher herself is acting extremely suspicious. Meanwhile, Yuki's face burns with embarrassment. She never noticed Koharu looking at her so often, and although it makes her happy, she still cannot fully believe it. Inside her mind, Marin confidently assumes all this teasing will make Yuki see Koharu as creepy and cowardly instead. Unfortunately for Koharu, he hears both girls' thoughts at the same time and completely loses track of how to handle the situation. The fake teacher then casually asks Yuki what she thinks about Maron. Yuki shyly answers that Maron is one of her precious friends. Deep down, however, Yuki secretly wonders if Maron might actually be Koharu's girlfriend already. The moment Koharu hears that thought, he immediately interrupts. He hurriedly insists that whatever happened earlier was not what Yuki imagined, and that nothing important happened between him and Marin. Instead of feeling relieved, Yuki becomes visibly sad, hearing him deny it so strongly. Marin quickly joins in, awkwardly laughing while insisting nothing exists between her and Koharu either. Inside her mind, though, she still compares him to an annoying insect. Suddenly, the fake teacher claims another student needs help with modern Japanese questions. Then she notices actual students approaching nearby and panics internally. Quickly, she announces that she must leave and rushes out of the room. As Marin hurries toward the rooftop stairs, Yuki points out that the rooftop is upstairs. Without missing a beat, the fake teacher casually replies that she plans to smoke there before disappearing completely. With the strange conversation finally over, Koharu glances at the clock and quietly says lunch break is almost over. Then he starts walking away. Yuki remains standing alone in the hallway with a sad expression. Her mind keeps replaying Koharu's words about not misunderstanding things. Finally, blushing intensely, she nervously calls out to him. In a shaky voice, she asks whether he hates it that much when she gets the wrong idea about him. Koharu stops and looks back in surprise. He cannot fully understand what she truly wants to ask. Instead of answering, he simply stays silent with a conflicted expression. Embarrassed by the silence, Yuki forces a soft laugh and says that of course nobody likes strange gossip about themselves. Then she quietly says goodbye and leaves. Later, sitting alone, Yuki's thoughts spiral again. She blames herself for becoming overly self-conscious and convinces herself that none of those moments ever meant anything special to Koharu. Someone like him would never fall for a girl like her. Still, for a brief moment, she had truly believed they shared something special together. Remembering that only makes her feel more embarrassed afterward. Meanwhile, Koharu walks downstairs while hearing every single thought inside her mind. Even from far away, her sadness reaches him clearly. For a moment, something tugs painfully at his heart. Still, he forces himself not to think about it any further.
Here I am, know it's been a while.